What is the purpose of art in worship? We're going to talk about that and other things here on Wake Up to the Bible. I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm here with my father, Dr. Kaplan, and together we're going through the books of the law. Today we're going to read Exodus 25:31 through Exodus 26:14, and I'll be reading from the Robert Alter translation. And you shall make a lampstand of pure gold, hammered work it shall be made. Its base and its shaft, its cups, its calyxes, and its blossoms shall be from that work. And 6 shafts going out from its side, 3 shafts of the lampstand from its side, and 3 shafts of the lampstand from its other side. 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the one shaft, calyx and blossom, and the 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the other shaft, calyx and blossom. Thus for the 6 shafts that go out from the lampstand. And on the lampstand 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, their calyxes and their blossoms, and a calyx as part of it under every 2 shafts, a calyx is part of it under every 2 shafts, for its 6 shafts coming out from the lampstand. Their calyxes and their shafts shall be part of it, all of it hammered work, pure gold. And you shall make it 7 lamps, and its lamps shall be mounted, and give light in front of it, and its tongs and its fire pans, pure gold. With a talent of pure gold shall it be made, with all its furnishings. And see, and make it by their pattern, which are shown, which you are shown on the mountain. Yeah, that's important. We'll talk about that later. And the tabernacle you shall make with 10 panels of twisted linen, with indigo and purple and crimson, and with cherubim. Designer's work you shall make them. The length of the panel is 28 cubits, and the width of 4 cubits to the one panel, a single measure for all the panels. 5 of the panels shall be joined to each other, and the other 5 joined to each other. And you shall make indigo loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the set, and thus shall you do on the edge of the outermost panel in the other set. 50 loops you shall make in the one panel, and 50 loops you shall make in the outermost panel, which is the other set, the loops opposite one another. And you shall make 50 golden clasps, and you shall join the panels to one another with the clasps, that the tabernacle be one whole. And you shall make goat hair panels for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 panels you shall make them. The length of the one panel 30 cubits, and the width of 4 cubits to the panel, a single measure for the 11 panels. And you shall join 5 of the panels by themselves, and 6 of the panels by themselves. And you shall double over the 6th panel at the front of the tent. And you shall make 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the one set, and 50 loops along the edge of the outermost panel in the other set. And you shall make 50 bronze clasps, and bring the clasps through the loops, and you shall join the tent, that it become whole. And the overhang left over in the tent panels, half of the leftover panel you shall let hang over the back of the tabernacle. And the cubit on one side and the cubit on the other is in what is left over in the length of the tent panels shall hang over both sides of their tabernacles to cover it. And you shall make a covering for the tent of red and ram skins, and a covering of ochre dyed skins above. All right, so we're getting a lot of details going on, and specifically in this section, what we have are some artistic things going on. We have work with, I guess, I don't know what you specifically call it. It's like blacksmithing or something, some sort of the way you craft. I'm not sure what that artistic term is called. Forgery, I guess, to make the. Wasn't it called forgery when you're making something out of metal?
Forging, I guess.
Yeah, forging. Yeah, forging something. Forgery. Yeah. I think it is called. It's not called forgery.
No,
That's just when you're trying to fake something. Okay, forging. All right. I apologize if that's your craft, because I probably just insulted you. But we have artisans working that way. We have artisans working with fabric and things like that. And that kind of gets to what my first point was, which is, what do you do with art in terms of your religious experience? Is there a place for artistic work? And I would say the Bible does in fact say yes. I think sometimes people do get a little bit into what's like, aestheticism, and they start to wonder, can you make beautiful things for God, or is that kind of showing off, or is that inappropriate? And what you see here is the tabernacle not only is artistic, but it's the best of the best. It's the finest. It's high quality things. So the idea that and then I talked about it last time, but the fine oils they poured over Jesus, and they're like, well, what about the poor? And he said, the poor will always have with us. The point is not as an organization, as a religious expression, that we have to just be like monks living in like a cave or something, right? Or in the most modest of things. The point is how you use those materials, right? What are you using those materials to do? What do they symbolize? What do they help direct your attention towards? Things like that.
Yeah, people were given ability,
Hmm.
creative ability, and that's something that if you have that kind of talent, you should develop that talent. It gives great uh, benefit to other people.
Yeah. And I
And
honestly think this is something the church has lost a lot. And you could say, what, Daniel? There's artists all over the place. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think if you look at the modern Christian church, there is a disrespect of the point of art. And I think one reason why is because, to be honest, and this is somebody I feel like I have a certain amount of artistic ability. I just realized that our background was not our normal background. I'll move it to this. Artistic ability. I have a certain amount. I designed this shirt, by the way, and I believe that within church organizations, there is very little done to try to encourage people to use artistic abilities for the organization. For example, you can go to so many church buildings and you do not see any representation of the talent of the individuals in the building at all. There might be people that are really good at painting and really good artists. What do they have a festival where they line their hallways with, paintings and drawings from the people in the church? Sometimes people do stuff like that, but there is not nearly as much of that as I see in secular areas, and I think that is sad. And I think one reason why is because artists such as myself, well, the artist personality tends to be experimental. It tends to want to challenge the norm. It tends to want to be avant-garde. And the problem with that is, well, the Bible is a lot about foundational principles, it's about morals. And so you have to literally take a personality type that wants to kind of question things and tell them, there's a certain amount of creativity you have, but within this framework, right? And that's a challenging thing to do because you have people throttling you on the religious side, and then you have the more artistic types that are like, well, if you're throttling yourself, you're kind of selling out, you're not being a true artist. So you got to find that balance, and it's hard. And I think that's one reason why God instructs them to use it, because we're going to see how it gets abused further on, right?
right, yeah, it ought to be possible to do it within the biblical
Yeah,
guidelines.
of
Yeah,
course. Yeah, but within the biblical guidelines is not some sort of, like I said, it's not some sort of dour thing. It's vibrant. It's this is a little bit obnoxious. I mean, in terms of, in a way, it's almost ostentatious. Like, you can give people a little bit more wiggle room than I think some people do in terms of the way that they artistically express themselves in boldness and vividness. The importance is not the importance is, are they trying to bring their best before God? Are they doing the due diligence, for quality, right? So yes, we need to be critical of what people are bringing before God, in a sense, because it needs to be quality. It should be the best of the best, right? It shouldn't just be the good enough, right? So that's tricky, because that steps on toes and stuff, but that's something to keep in mind. But then also, I would say, not only does it need to be quality, it needs to be the best of the best. Like I said, it needs to have a vividness to it, a boldness to it, not a blandness to it. That's what I get out of here.
in the Bible we see God gives gifts. It's not only to the preacher, but He gives gifts
Right,
to the artisan, to the architect.
right,
God inspires that aspect of life as
right.
well, and that's an important part of human endeavor.
Yeah.
And that's not just the speaker.
Hmm.
It's
Well, I
also
think
uh,
the art speaks for itself. I
right,
think that's the point, right?
but the but
There
the
there are there are principles we're supposed to get out of this.
but the builder, the artisan,
Hmm.
the one the architect, the one who also does the actual, let's say, brute work. God inspires him as well,
Yep.
and we have to I think we should keep that in mind. We'll see more of that later on as we go through
Yeah,
Exodus.
right. Um, so
I wanted to.
what also is interesting, what also is interesting that you get from this and later on is that okay, so these Israelites were slaves in Egypt, right? But part of what they did had to involve some of these artistic things because they were able to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes I think we can get this notion that okay, they were just kind of the brute labor moving heavy rocks around, but there obviously was a lot more they were doing,
Probably.
right?
Yeah.
And think of and that also can help reframe it, right? Imagine they were people that had to build idols over and over and over
Right.
again. Well, then it kind of naturally it's like their natural job, and so like, oh, okay, well, we'll just build an idolatrous representation of God because we're kind of used to that. That's what we normally do, right? That's just normal. That's what everybody else does.
A cubit could be about in America about a foot and a half, but there was a royal cubit a little bit more, slightly more than 2 feet. From the South African perspective, like it could be about half a meter or maybe around 2/3 of a meter.
He says
Uh,
that because we know we have a listener in South Africa.
what?
Well, because they're not the only people that use the
No,
metric
no,
system.
everybody uses metric, I think, except the Americans.
I was just pointing out to the audience. You said South African because we have a South
Oh,
African
okay, I
listener that we
see.
are aware of. I'm sure that we have listeners that have the metric system in other
I
places.
was very, impressed when I lived in Canada that older Canadians were still using, as I recall, inches and feet and miles when they spoke.
Oh
And
wow.
maybe because they live close to the U.S. or they see a lot of
Hmm.
U.S. TV,
Yeah.
or maybe they just were being a little bit stubborn. But I remember being in Canada, the signs were in meters,
Right.
or kilometers, so many kilometers to this city, and so on. But yet when I spoke with Canadians, a lot of times they were still using the what was in the UK years ago before they switched to metric. So anyway,
Right. 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 Now we need to make a correction because the Bible just slapped us in the face. Now, because on the last episode we were talking about the cherubim associated with the mercy seat, but here I see there are cherubim mentioned on these panels. Now, where are these panels? Does
uh,
it say, at least according to his translation, it says 10 panels of twisted linen and indigo and purple and crimson with cherubim. What does that mean?
well, they're woven
Right, so
into the
we have a
fabric.
depiction of cherubim not just in the Holy of Holies, right?
Yeah, that's a good
So we
point.
need to correct ourselves. The
Yeah,
Bible
correct.
just corrected us.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah.
So what does that mean? Because we were talking in the last episode about can you have depictions of angelic people around your
This is a
sanctuary?
little less extreme. The ones in the Holy of Holies are like statuary.
Right,
This is more like
right.
a decoration
So
on
you
a
think there
curtain.
is a difference between having a sculpture, which is something because of the second commandment you need to be more careful
Right,
about.
I would say.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to give the audience a
Yeah,
consistency in the view, right?
I would
So your
say
consistency would be something like statuary, we have to be very
very
cautious about.
careful about.
Something like a motif is very different.
Yeah, I would say.
I think that makes sense. That seems reasonable because it's like a
Okay.
pattern. If you think of it like a wallpaper or something, you don't put a lot of attribution to that. So I gotcha.
And then there's a way of doing it. Uh,
Which
I
we don't exactly
No,
know
but I noticed that in certain religions, well, a particular one that I won't mention by name, when they picture people,
why.
they have this
Why
halo.
don't you just say it?
Well, no, okay. In the Catholic tradition,
Yes.
they picture people with like a
Yeah,
halo
it's a
around them,
golden sort of
and
thing.
that's I don't
But
think
do you think
that's
that
a
they really think that's how they looked, or do you think they're just trying to make an artistic interpretation about it? Because it does say like Moses' face shone and they couldn't even look at it and things like that.
well
Isn't that
Moses,
a
but
little
yeah,
bit of
but
artistic throttling?
Moses, but not a lot of these other people.
Yeah, but
Uh,
isn't it just a way to say that they're righteous? Because then you know
uh,
it's that is a righteous character being
okay,
pictured.
all right. Maybe I'm being
Yeah.
too
See, but see, this is
too
where I get
finicky.
at. This is the challenge, right?
Right,
Because when
yeah,
you
right,
have you need to have these sort of discussions. This
right,
is healthy. The healthy thing is for an artist, but you know what I mean. The healthy thing is for
right,
an
yeah,
artist to be like, well, I want to do this and I want to go this, and then for somebody that's maybe not as artistically minded, more
right.
what do you want to call it?
Legalistic, or I don't
No,
know,
not even legalistic,
or
like more like what do you call it? Specific
yeah,
or um uh uh
prosaic. I don't know.
exact. What is that? Like no, like an exactness. That's what I'm getting at. Somebody who wants it kind of on the nose
Yeah.
versus somebody who's willing to be creative for the sake of making a point.
More rigid personality, maybe.
Literalist. That's what I mean.
Or whatever.
So there's a difference between being literalist and artistic, right? Because a
Right.
lot of art is metaphor, it's something, and so somebody might be like, well, I don't really get that. What are you trying to say when you have this depiction? And then the artist can explain. And then you can have a conversation because sometimes the literalist is right.
But
Because what
certainly,
what people can walk away from is a weird notion of something because the metaphor is poor. And so you do need to have those
but
conversations.
certainly in the Bible, when it comes to literature, metaphors all over the place.
Which is why I'm not as concerned about about visual metaphor.
It's like, you know,
Right, but that's the
Judah
reason.
is a lion's whelp, and on and on
No,
it goes.
exactly. So
Yeah,
what if somebody wanted to visually demonstrate that verse? It would
it,
it would look kind of interesting, right? So and you're not and less people think I think my dad's like ridiculously rigid. My dad certainly has endorsed and enjoyed visually symbolic things,
in my house,
Yeah, right.
I have Chagall's windows.
Right.
You
Which is all
know,
kinds of
and
visual representations of the
that used to
tribes.
be a background to my messages.
Yeah,
Now I'm looking at it while I'm speaking. But
yeah,
it used to be
yeah,
behind me.
yeah,
But Chagall's windows are up in my home. Not
yeah.
all of them.
Right,
I wish I had all 12.
right.
I think I have 4 of them.
Right. And whenever you do something like that,
By the way,
and sometimes, to be honest, getting abstract is more appropriate.
Chagall's windows are his depiction of Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33 of the 12 tribes of
Hmm.
Israel. And that you find them in the chapel of the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem.
Hmm.
But they're used in a lot of different ways as keychains
Hmm.
and as on
Very
the
beautiful
wall
artwork.
and on my.
And there is beautiful artwork. I will say I'm going to agree with my dad, and I don't think it's just my cultural bias, but I do tend to find stained glass and artistic works from the Jewish culture fit more within my biblical framework than say the Catholic culture. And that's because of in my opinion, the way it's done, I just appreciate more. I think there's a certain amount of thoughtfulness that I like. I would certainly rather look at Chagall's windows and say the Sistine Chapel.
Although that is impressive art,
Oh yeah, and I think there's something really great about it, and I think it's sad
but it's
that there aren't other like why isn't there why don't we have that anymore? Like people, there were atheists that were upset when Notre Dame caught on fire, you know, and that's a nice thing. It's a nice thing that there are things that people just respect so much because it's so well done. It's so beautiful. It is the best of the best. Let me just kind of get on a little bit of a soapbox right now. Currently, I think there is a crisis, particularly in music going on, and people badmouth it for being simplistic and not artistically interesting. And the truth of the matter is in many ways they are correct. And this should not be something that the secular world could do. People didn't do that for Handel's Messiah, and it's not just a bias because they don't like the lyrical content. There is a reason why, and it's because there's a certain blandness because it's about being kind of commercial, it's about being kind of safe. It's not to me fitting what with this sort of attitude. And I'm not just saying, every individual example. I'm just talking about a cultural norm. I don't feel the cultural norm right now going on about artistic expression and how you do worship is this. I don't think we're concerned with the best of the best. I don't think we're concerned with how we're coming across to people who aren't in our religion. Some people joined the church back in the day just because the buildings were beautiful or because the music was effective, right? And I know you could say, well, some people are moved by the music nowadays and whatever. Fair enough, but I don't think there's enough. There. Whenever people bring it up, they often get batted down. They're like, "Well, how dare you be so critical of other Christians? You're just being a mean-spirited person." And yes, that can be the case, but often when people are challenging people to do better, it is a good thing. It is a good thing to challenge people to do better. We should be presenting God our best,
I
and
wouldn't,
that matters.
but I wouldn't endorse that depiction of God and Adam there that you
Yeah, well, the
mentioned.
second commandment violation kind of.
That I think was
Yeah.
over the edge.
Right. I also don't think it's very nice to Adam to have him naked like that because, I mean, yes,
But
I know he was naked and not ashamed when he was alone with his wife, but I don't think he would want people to envision him nude the rest of his life. I mean, really? That seems kind of inappropriate. You know what I mean? And that kind of static thing. It's one thing like maybe in a movie, in an illustrated movie or something. It's another thing when you have like a painting you look at all the time and it's you as a nude person. I just don't think that's very
I didn't
appropriate.
think we were going to necessarily get into the area of music, but I will say that in the Psalms there's about 30 different titles, and many of them seem to be different kinds of music that were used for the Psalms. There are various kinds of music that were used. If you look at Psalm 96 and Psalm 98, it talks about singing a new song to the Eternal. So you can take the words of the Bible, but you can work with them in various ways and various
Yeah.
genres, and
And I mean, you can even craft
yeah,
new words. That's not the end of the world.
right, no, right,
It's just when you're doing that, what's your purpose? Are you
right,
giving God your best?
right,
Are you trying to push to be the
right,
best poetry in the world? Or are you, it's good enough?
right. And another thing, I wasn't going to get into this either, but um, there's a tendency in religion to sort of preserve older things as if
Hmm.
they're better,
Yes.
and older things are not necessarily better,
Right.
you know. Uh,
Yeah.
Styles change, fashion changes.
Hmm.
Now, modesty should be practiced, but styles can change.
Hmm.
I mean, for example, in my community, there are people that still dress like Polish noblemen of maybe the 17th
Right.
century.
Or like the
They
Amish,
have these big fur hats.
Yeah.
Now I doubt that if you went back to the ancient Middle East, anybody would have looked like that.
Right.
And yet here are these
And they froze in some
here are these
place.
Jewish
Yeah.
people that have these big fur hats,
Hmm.
and so on.
Yeah,
And,
people have a
and
tendency to be like, this is when
yeah,
society went off the edge. Boop!
yeah, you're
And you
right.
just freeze
Freeze
there
there.
as if that really makes sense.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you can do that, but I guess you have to go back to the Garden of Eden and you have to be naked and live on your own in isolation in the woods.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if you're really
Right.
doing that, it's
Right. Right.
like, take your wife and go out in the woods and,
Yeah.
and do that. All right. Anything else you want to get to before we move on?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
now that I've offended all the Christian artists out there, again, I'm not intending to offend you. I'm intending to build you up and ask you to try to give God your best. And if you feel like you're already doing your best, then fair enough. Does if the shoe fits, if the shoe doesn't fit, then I'm not talking to you. Okay. If I am, try harder. That's all. I work with artists all the time, so I just want to be clear. I'm very supportive of the artistic process. And also that doesn't mean, let me give another example. That doesn't mean if your 8-year-old kid in your congregation wants to present something to the congregation, you have to be like, well, that's not on our standard. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. If you like this show, please like it, subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you tomorrow.